This is my turbo street rail. I bought it off Craigslist. It was a sand rail whenever I picked it up. Did a few modifications to it, suspension, some bodywork, glass, new seats. Um, did some rewiring. Before we get into that though, here's some pictures of what it looked like when I picked it up. You can see there's no bodywork over the front of it. It had some speakers on it, plastic windshield, off-road wheels, tires, suspension set a lot higher. I wanted to lower it down so it handle a little bit better, as good as a rear engine vehicle can. But before we get into that, I'll address some of the big questions. Is it street legal? Yes, it is. And then, of course, what kind of motor is in it? It's a 2.3 liter turbo Ford out of an 88 Thunderbird turbo coupe. The radiators you can see is mounted in the back. The intercooler is right there behind the front seats. It does have the turbo. It was a turbo engine, but it's got a T3, T4 hybrid knockoff eBay turbo. It's been on there for a few years now without issue. Currently set up to run 12 pounds of boost. In my dyno video that's here online, you can see it put down 174 horsepower, 219 pound-foot of torque. It's mated to a VW bus transaxle, a 5-rib transaxle. Seems to hold the power okay. We had to do custom axles to get it to fit in there after we put the new rear suspension on, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Here you can see the transaxle in front of the engine. It's geared extremely low. It's one of the things that needs to be addressed. At 70 mile an hour, it's turning about 3,700 RPM. So it's not great on the highway, but it's fantastic for cruising around town. Just super short geared. The second thing people always notice when they see the buggy are the wheels and tires. They kind of jump out at you with the big fat meats on there. Mickey Thompson tires, Krager Series 69 wheels, 15 by 10 wheels. I wanted some real meaty tires. I had to keep the profile a little bit taller. I'd like to have a little bit lower profile tire, but with the gearing situation, if I go any shorter on the tires, it's really going to just be screaming at highway speeds. Talked a little bit about the suspension. We'll talk about the beam here for a second. This was built by Air Cooled. They do custom beams for lower VW bugs. I had him build a beam for me. With that beam comes brakes, Willwood 4-piston brakes. I really liked his beam style because the shock towers look like a more finished piece versus what you would get out of a Volkswagen Bug with those stamped ends. But it's got adjustable front shocks. It's got adjusters on the beam so you can raise or lower the height. We see here mounted on the back side of the beam, I have a PVC tube that's covered in black tape. That has about 50 pounds of lead weight, again to help with the weight balance because it is a rear bias vehicle. Looking inside here, we can see the Willwood master cylinders, the Optima battery, Hello horns. I've got a battery shut off as well. Moving to the cockpit, we can see it's got Sparco steering wheel. A lot of people give me a hard time about how small it is. Cup holders. Got to have cup holders in the vehicle. I also have a front rear bias control there where I can adjust the front rear bias for the brakes. It helps out significantly with the heavy weight bias on the rear. Willwood pedal box. As we move to the cockpit, we can see the BugTech shifter, which is made out of Germany. Probably my favorite enhancement on the vehicle. And then we also have a turn signal control module there. Kirky aluminum seats with Schroth 4-point harnesses. I did channel or cut out the bottom of these seats so that I could lower them down between the frame rails. There are supports underneath the seat, but this allowed me to drop the seats down about an additional 2.5 inches, which provides a lot more head clearance for me when I'm inside the vehicle. I have a bag there on the side to keep some documents and things like that. Fire extinguisher, in case I ever need it. And then my rear view mirrors I picked up at a local motorcycle shop. Those I believe were for R6 maybe, if I'm not mistaken. Moving to the rear suspension, I had that built by Cool Ride Customs. These were custom arms that were built that moved the rear axle toward the rear of the vehicle 3 inches and then widened it out 2 inches as well. What's really trick about this suspension is what you see here on the screen, the camber plate adjusters. It works like a giant eccentric to move the position, that front pivot point, and by doing that, it changes how much camber you have in those rear tires. Having the vehicle lowered naturally increases the negative camber on the rear end, but those eccentric adjusters allow me to run it at a neutral position. We also see as part of this kit, it comes with an anti-sway bar that's mounted underneath the vehicle. I have Fox adjustable shocks, coilovers. I believe right now I have 250-pound springs. I think I'm going to go up to probably a 300 or 350-pound springs. I got to play with some things. And then again, we see here matching Wilwood 4-piston calipers on the rear end as well.